we always have a decision, right?
Yeah.
Your power lies in your decision. And I think often we always believe, that's just the way that it is, or that's just what I was born into, or I've always been that way, so it can't change. And that's just not true. That's not how it works. It happens in the small, incremental, little decisions that compound on one another.
Welcome, Badass Manifester. I am so glad you are here. I'm your host and head coach, Ashley Gordon, master mindset and manifestation biz expert, founder of the quantum coaching certification, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur obsessed with empowering you to create quantum leaps in your energy, your life, and your business. This is the show to help you make magic your everyday normal, where the ripple effect is real and the guest experts are world class. My mission is to power your conscious and subconscious mind with manifestation teachings, business tools, and coaching techniques to put your potential into action. Consider this your weekly up level. Are you ready for quantum transformation? Let's do this. Welcome back to the Badass Manifester podcast. I'm super excited today. I have such an amazing guest for you guys. Her name is Rachel Gibler, and she is a 3-time entrepreneur. She is a business coach, an amazing podcaster called It's Fucking Spiritual. She is a public speaker. I've watched her speak, captivating AF. She's a spiritual badass, obviously. She quit her corporate job over 3 years ago and built the #1 eyelash salon in the greater Houston area. She founded her online company, The Gilbert Brands, and has been published by Yahoo, The Zoe Report, and The Female Hustlers. Rachel hosts the top 25. Like I told you, her podcast is amazing. Like it's blowing up, actually. And I'm going to be on there, so you're going to have to go listen to it like ASAP. And she's on a mission to help you rewrite the rules, make magic from your messy, and manifest a life wilder than your dreams. And I'm just so excited because her and I connected at the Summit of Slay, where we both were speakers, and I just instantly felt drawn to you. So I'm so happy that you're here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Ash. I have been so pumped to do this with you ever since we met back at Summit, and this is going to be epic. So I can't wait.
Me too. So I know that you have quite the journey, and I got to hear it on stage, which was super cool. So I want you to just share about how you became who you are, because I know that who you are today is not who you have always been, and it's been a journey. So please share.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Has it been a journey? Okay. So I guess I'll start kind of from the beginning. I'll try to keep it relatively short for you guys because it's quite the story that unfolds over about 8-ish years. But I was not always the business owner, podcaster that people see today. And I try to really keep that at the forefront of my business and my podcast so that everyone knows it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter who you used to be, your past, what you've been through, like power to change in every moment. And you have the power to create what you want. And so I love sharing this side too, so that people can really relate. So for those of you guys that don't know me, hi, my name is Rachel Gibler, host of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast, like Ashley said. And the whole reason that I'm here is because if we rewind back to when I was 16 years old, I had a wonderful upbringing. I was an only child to 2 parents and my grandmother who lived with me too. So really had 3 parents raise me and had a beautiful, beautiful childhood. But when I was 16, my life turned upside down and my dad was killed in a freak accident. And this really just threw my entire world for a loop, like just shattered everything I ever knew. My father was the only like breadwinner in the family. There was just so many. My parents had been together since they were 13 years old. I mean, it was just so devastating for our family. And that sent me down a spiral of about 8 years where I went off to college and immediately got into an abusive relationship that lasted nearly 4 years. I started numbing out on drugs and alcohol, like truly just treated my body the way that I felt inside. Right. And I think so many of us do that is when we're running from something and we don't want to deal with what's in front of us. We numb out, we try to ignore it. Right. And it doesn't matter if it's, losing your father, something as tragic as that, or just being in a job that you hate, right? It's anything that we don't want to look at, we tend to numb out. And that's what I did for so long. And I ended up getting out of that relationship, but it left me so just broken with low self-esteem. And at this time, when my dad had passed and all the way through the next about 8 years, I considered myself to be atheist. So I didn't grow up with any framework for spirituality, for a belief outside of myself, like literally nothing. We weren't against it, but we weren't like, I just didn't know, right? I wasn't aware of something greater than myself. And I always felt like there was a big purpose inside of me, but I didn't know what that would be, right? And when I was going through all of this, every single time, and I'll never forget when I was sitting next to my when he passed, and Ash, I shared this in the speech on stage, is I had this knowing rush through me, and it said to me, "This won't be all for nothing." And I pushed it down and I didn't listen to it. But every single time, like when that boyfriend hit me, or, I took the drugs I didn't want to take, I would hear that voice, like, it's not going to be all for nothing. And this lasted for about 8 years. I took a corporate job in Houston, Texas, where I live, when I was 21 years old after graduating. And also keep in mind, guys, everything in my life looked okay on the surface. Like, yes, I had lost my dad, but that had been years ago, right? And I was showing up. I was number one in my corporate job. I was top salesperson. It seemed like I was fine, but I was numbing out on the weekends and hiding it from people, and just so incredibly broken. And it wasn't until now, almost 4 years ago, that I myself was in a freak accident. And I had been actually crying to my mom a few weeks before this on the phone. I will never forget. It was on my lunch break, and I was telling her, "Oh my gosh, like, I wish time would just stop. Like, I am working 80 hours a week. I can't even think. Like, I hate what I'm doing, but I'm on this hamster wheel, and I just have no time to even reflect on or heal anything that I've been through, right? I've just been like churning and burning and going through all this trauma without processing it." And as we know now, the universe, your wish is my command, right? So a few weeks after that, I get in a freak accident, completely shattered my leg, tore my ACL, and was in a cast from my hip to my ankle, had to take 3 months medical leave and move back in with my mom. And this was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, because it was the catalyst for the change that I ended up making. Because it forced me to get sober. And when I got sober, I had to look at my shit. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I had no framework, but I literally just started and Googled how to be happy. That is how I found my very first self-development books. I didn't even know what were at that time. I found podcasts and decided to dedicate those 3 months in bed. Either I realized, like, I could numb out on Netflix, continue taking these painkillers, do what I've always done, go back to the job I hate in 3 months, or I can use this time to change my life. And so I dedicated those 3 months to studying entrepreneurship, self-development, wasn't even into spirituality yet, and went back, quit my job, started my first brick and mortar company that turned into two. And then I documented that on Instagram, and that slowly turned into a coaching business, and now podcast. I became spiritual, and now it's fucking Spiritual is born. So that was kind of a very long-winded, but that's the whole story of kind of how I got here. Yeah, and it's been a crazy journey.
I literally have like had chills like 4 different times as you were talking. Like literally, like I even wrote it in the comments, like chills,
I
chills.
know.
Like I have chills right now. It's just wild how it all happens.
Yeah.
And like you said, you had those moments where you could have chose something different. Like you could have
Yes.
numbed out, but you chose to change your life. And
Yeah.
I think that that sometimes is like the hardest moment for people to like understand that they have this choice that could literally change everything for them. And so I would
Yeah.
love to dive into that a little bit more with you, but also just honoring your story, honoring your journey, and how your words really do create your reality, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ash. That means the world to me. And I think to your point, we always have a decision, right?
Yeah.
Your power lies in your decision. And I think often we always believe, that's just the way that it is, or that's just what I was born into, or I've always been that way, so it can't change. And that's just not true. That's programming and conditioning that you're used to, right? That might be comfortable for you, even though you don't like the outcome. It's a comfortable outcome, right? Because it's
Yeah.
predictable. But what I think people, one thing that I've noticed in a lot of the clients that I've worked with, or just even people in my community online, is everybody's looking for that one big moment that changes everything. Right? Like the one quick fix. And it's like, one day I'm just going to wake up and I'm just going to get it. And then it's all going to be fine and perfect. Right? And that's not how it works. It happens in the small incremental little decisions that compound on one another.
Mm.
I didn't lay in bed for 3 months and find self-development and then start my podcast and it blew up huge. It took 3 years for me to even launch my podcast, right? All I did was Google how to be happy, and then I followed that little voice that said click on this or this book. Okay, all right, I'm going to grab a journal. I'd never done that before. I'm like, all right, let's maybe listen to podcasts instead of music. It was the small little shifts that you make every day that are just slightly different that begin to compound and will exponentially change your life. And all of a sudden you look back and realize you're not the same person anymore. And that's
Mm.
really how it happens.
It's so true. I say that all the time about how like the small moment, like the ordinary moments make the extraordinary life, you
Yes.
know?
Oh, I love that. I just got chills. Oh, that's so good.
I mean, we're tracking, like that is it. Like that is
Yeah.
it. And how just like change does happen in the small moments. It's the
Mm-hmm.
small decisions. I love that so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember when you were talking on stage and sharing about, how when you first started building your business, you felt like you had to be like everybody else, and it was easy
Yes.
for you to compare yourself to others. And will you share about that?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love talking about this. So I didn't even touch on that
Yeah.
in my story. So basically, when I found self development, right, and I got really into it, I've always wanted to share my story. So I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I've always wanted to be a speaker, an author, have a blog, something like that, right? And so I'd say maybe about 9 months after the accident in 2018, I started my Instagram account, right? And what this looked like was basically taking my high school Instagram account, deleting everything, and like, quote unquote, coming out as like, I'm going to start sharing my self development tips. And believe me, guys, I had so much resistance. Like, it was so terrifying for me. So don't think that this was easy. I literally posted my first photo and threw my phone across the room. It was like, I'm not looking at this. And so naturally, what had happened is, I came online to share my story in a really vulnerable way. I think the first 3 posts, I mean, I was sharing about my abusive ex, and a lot of people from that time were following me, that like knew him and me, like a lot of things like that, where I was so scared, but I just did it anyway. And it came from this place of truly wanting to help women, wanting to teach these self-development principles that had changed my life, and just start to share what I had been through in my story. And I did about 3-4 months, and crazy is it grew astronomically. Like, people were loving it because I was just so authentically myself. At this time, I didn't know anything about online coaching or the industry or business. was just literally purely speaking from the heart. And then about 4 months in, I had kind of started to get connected with coaches and learn about this world. And I went to an event in Miami, and I was the only non-coach at this event. It was like a small retreat. I think about 12 women were there. And at that retreat, they taught me, oh, well, you can make money literally in your DMs. Like, you can sell an offer. And that's where I learned what an offer was, all these things. And, they asked me, well, what are people asking you in your DMs? And at the time, I'm really good at like editing photos. I love the aesthetics of things. Like, if you look at my brand, you'll see that I love that kind of like neutral, like moody, vibey thing. So I was getting a lot of DMs being like, how are you making your feed look like this? How, even though they were saying I was inspiring, right? No one was asking me to life coach them. So I switched to social media coaching. Yeah. So they kind of, the women that I had met. Yeah. So that's what happened. So the women that I had met, and no, I mean, they're wonderful people and wonderful business owners, but they just taught me what they knew at the time. And they were like, you sell what you're getting asked about. And so what's crazy is, I had never made any money online before. And between the time that they told me about this and like 2 weeks later, I made about $5,000 in social media coaching. Like, people were buying it. It was crazy. And I started doing that, and I did it for about 3 months. It's funny. If you scroll back at my Instagram, I haven't deleted anything. You'll see me like coming out as a social media coach and like doing the captions, like the 4 ways to grow your Instagram account below. Like, hilarious. It's like not me at all.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hated it. I hated it. And it was because it wasn't the thing I was meant to do, right?
Yeah.
It
wasn't fully aligned.
No, it wasn't on my heart, but I didn't have the self-awareness at the time, or the confidence at the time, to be able to create what I truly wanted in the world. And so I looked around outside of myself at what is everyone else doing that's successful. And I really lost sight of my original mission. And I'm so grateful to my past self after about 3 months of this, realizing it and deciding, if I continue, I'm going to be at 10K months, 20K months. I mean, quick. And I could see where it was going. And I was like, I'm going to be a slave to the didn't want to create. And so I pulled the plug on the whole thing and decided to go back inward and do more growth. And for another year, I really just didn't post that much. I kind of was like off and on, but I wasn't coaching much. And that's when I found spirituality. So it actually worked perfectly.
Wow.
And I hired a spiritual coach, and she really opened me up to this entire new world of manifestation and law of attraction. Because at the time I was just doing mindset, more of that masculine goal setting, self-development type of structure. And then, I mean, everything works so in divine timing and perfectly. At the time I'm like, why isn't this working for me? But now I'm like, oh, I had to go through my spiritual awakening in order to then, create It's Fucking Spiritual, which is a whole nother thing.
Yeah. We're gonna get into, because
yeah.
I think that there's so many profound lessons in what you just shared for people to hear around just sticking to something just because it's making you money, but it's out of alignment with your actual mission. And mission and money, they can go together. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. And I think that's a really hard lesson for some people to get.
Yeah. And here's what I'll say. This is from what I've seen and just intuitively what I feel. If you are not putting mission and money together, you could be making all the money in the world right now. You are not in it for the long game, period. Nope. Like, I'm sorry. But that is, if you are in it only for the money and you are out of alignment with your mission and it doesn't feel good, you will burn bright and burn out at some point. Doesn't matter. Like, that is what will happen. And so if you really want to make a difference, you have to go with the mission first and put the money aside, put your ego aside. Sometimes you have to scale back to scale forward, right? But if you really fucking care about your mission, that will make you money eventually. You just have to continue on the mission, right? So
that's why, this is why we immediately connected, because I could feel that from you. And I know your community feels that from you, and my community feels that from me. Like, that is why we are successful.
Yes. Exactly.
That is why I started with the mission. You started with like, ooh, this is nice. Oh no, this isn't my mission. Getting on my mission, boom, everything
Yes.
explodes.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And I think, for the listeners, ask yourself this. If you're a business owner, if I lost every single penny tomorrow, like if my business just went completely under tomorrow, would I restart it with the same thing that I'm trying to do now? Would I restart my mission? And that's how I know I'm on the right track, is that I could lose everything tomorrow and I will rebuild this from the ground up. Know it, like with spiritual principles, teaching women exactly what I teach. You're not your past, because that's what matters. It's not the money, it's not the business. And that's why the business is successful. So ask yourself that. It's like, would you restart this tomorrow if it blew up?
Yes, for me.
Yeah,
100%.
I absolutely would too. Like, I can't not do this. I have no choice.
I can't. I have no choice.
It chose me. Like, I don't care. That's what I tell everyone. I'm like, I don't care if this takes 5 years, 10 years to 20 years to pop off. Like, I know exactly where this is going, because I'm not stopping until like I'm dead. So here we are.
And there's an energy to that. There's an energy to that too, because it's like, I don't care how long it takes. That's detachment for me, right? Like, I don't care.
Exactly.
I know where I'm going. Detachment, like vision, like it's all connected to like really core manifestation principles. And I don't even know if you know that you're doing that. Like, you're doing that, but it gets to a point where you know that your success is inevitable no matter what. I knew that from the beginning too. I think that's so hard for some people.
Yeah.
Because you're like blindly like going through this, like you're blindly moving through your business. Like I say this all the time, but it's like the Avicii song, "Feeling My Way Through the Darkness."
Yeah.
Guided by a beating heart. I can't tell where this journey will end, but I know where it starts.
Yeah.
So
It's so true. And I'd say, if the way to get that feeling is to connect to your mission and deeper connect to your mission. Like, we say like, oh, know that my success is inevitable. I didn't know my success was inevitable until this year. Like, I could have said that principle. I could have told you that you should know that. But inside, did I feel it like I feel it now? No, because I hadn't figured out really who I am. I hadn't gotten clear on what I'm here to do and how I'm here to do it. Now, you and I have very distinct brands, but at the time I was blending in with everybody else, and I was teaching the principles kind of here and there, but I was very 1 foot in, 1 foot out, dabbling. And so if you feel like your success is inevitable, you're not connected to who you are meant to be in the world enough yet. So work on that first.
What are some tips to help people work on that? Like, what are some ways that they can get on that?
So the thing that I always ask people when they come to me, because I have intuitive business coaching clients now, and I'm shifting even away from that to really be more of that spiritual teacher. But the things that I'll ask my business clients is, I say, I don't want you to be like me. Like, I don't want you to be like me at all. I want to guide you to becoming more of you, right? And so the very first question that we answer is, if you were to leave this earth tomorrow, right? But you had the opportunity to tell the entire world one message, and one message only, what would your message be? And that's where we start.
That's powerful shit.
Yeah.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, you have to get to the root of it first and then build everything from there. If you've got shiny object syndrome, girlfriend, it ain't gonna work. So we're not gonna do that.
So good. So good. Because that's really what it comes down to. We all have one, if we can dial in that message and that one thing that we want to tell the world, what would it be? Damn.
Yeah. And it's so different for all of us,
It is.
And that's what I learned is when I switched to social media coaching, right? Someone that was coaching me at the time, amazing coach, millionaire coach, like really, really awesome. And her why, I remember she would always say is, I want to empower women through entrepreneurship. And when I switched, I tried to make that my why.
Oh yeah, and you wanted to empower women through entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like, yeah, like that can be my why, and I will be a social media coach and whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because she was living in her truth. That's why it worked. But for me, that's why it didn't feel good, because that wasn't the message I was meant to give to the world, right? Wow. So you can't build a business borrowing someone else's why and make it your own, right? Like you have to
It will
live your
never
own
work.
why.
It
No.
will never work. Trust
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. You can copy every single thing that someone tells you to do, and it's not going to work for you if it's out of alignment. And if it does work for you, I pray it doesn't, honestly. Because if it works for you, you're going to end up being a slave to the business you don't want to create. And eventually it will burn out anyway because you're doing it for money.
Yep.
So either way, you
Yeah.
take your pick, right? Do the inner work first.
Do the inner work first. Amen to that. Amen to that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how, like, what inspired you to create It's Fucking Spiritual, but a little bit before that, I would love for you to talk about, like, your brand is obviously on point. Like, if you guys go follow her on Instagram, but like you talk about being messy.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
how can you, like, this is your authenticness coming through, right? Like this is you.
Yeah.
And you're okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
How did you become okay with that? And like, let's talk about that for a second.
Sure. So I think, so the way that It's Fucking Spiritual was born, right, is that obviously I've told I was a social media coach, pulled the plug on that about a year, really about a year and a half, almost 2 years until I launched It's Fucking Spiritual this year. And, I had looked around at everyone in the spiritual community and the mindset communities, right? And again, still looking outside of myself, even though I knew not to do that, but I'm just looking at the mindset and spiritual gurus instead of the social media coaches, right? But I was looking up to people, and I realized, in the mindset life coach community, there was a lot of really like buttoned up and looking very polished and professional. And like, I have my whole life together. And I didn't resonate with that because y'all, Hot Mess Express, like still to this day. And I don't know if I'll ever not be that, right? That's a part of personality. I'm just somebody that dives in, trusts the net's going to appear, right? And so I didn't see myself really represented there. And so it made me feel inadequate. It made me feel a little bit less than, like, can I really do this, right? Are people going to respect me? And then so I thought, well, maybe I'll fit in the spiritual community. And then I looked at the spiritual community, and a lot of it was very like airy fairy, I'm going to meditate in a meadow, and like, and honestly, friends with people like, do you, girlfriend? But that's not me, right? Like, I sometimes still take tequila shots. Like, I like, doing all the different things, right? You could be a hot mess and a hot success. I say that all the time on my podcast. And I think this year, to answer your question about how did I become comfortable with it, I didn't. Honestly, what happened was I saw this, and I realized it was about a year ago, and I was sitting there, I was like, I don't fit in either of these boxes, right? But these are the principles that changed my life. This is what I want to teach. But I don't see myself represented, the girl that is messy, the girl that still has the past, the girl that's really fucking real with you, the one that doesn't act like she has her life all together, right? And so one day I just said, you know what? It's fucking spiritual, like whatever. And then I was like, wait, hang on, that could be a thing, right? And before I launched the brand, I was terrified. I was like, is anybody going to get this? Should I not put the word fuck in my title? People told me not to do that, right? I was terrified that people, same fears coming up of like, they're not going to think that I'm that I know what I'm talking about because I'm messy. People aren't going to want to, invest in what I have to offer because, insert excuse here, right? Because I've seen it done before. But I just chose to rip the Band-Aid off and follow my gut feeling anyway, despite feeling the fear, despite being uncomfortable. And it landed so well when I did. And I was so myself that's when I actually gained the confidence to realize, like, oh, this is going to work, right? Like, I leaped before I was ready with being unattached to if people were going to love it or not, and just being really rooted in, you know what, this is me. And I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. And I'm just going to put it out in the world, and whoever likes it, likes it. And the amount of DMs I get now on a daily basis of people being like, I have never liked the spiritual community or whatever, but I've never found somebody that sees me so much.
Because they can see themselves in you.
Exactly. Exactly. And so
And it's
now,
relatable as fuck.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was my mission. My mission is to bring spirituality to the masses, but making it understandable, relatable, doable, fun. Right? Not
Yes.
so fucking serious. Like, you guys, like, if you miss your fucking meditation in the morning, like, it's fine. Just like keep going. Like, it's okay. Like, what are the reasons we're doing all this shit? Like, it's just, I want to talk about it in a practical way because
Yes.
these are tools and principles that the entire world needs, and I think will heal the world. But we need to bridge the gap between the people that seem like they're, the monks that are like reached enlightenment and like the normal fucking people. I'm
Yeah,
like, where's the
totally.
bridge? Right. So I want to be
Totally.
that bridge.
I love that so much. You are that bridge.
Thank you. Thank
You
you.
don't want to be it. You are it.
Thank
Literally.
you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one time I did a podcast on like what does it mean to be spiritual anyway? And I talked about like drinking alcohol and smoking pot and like cursing and sugar, like just like all these things that we think are not spiritual.
Yeah.
And really like what I'm getting from you is that it's all fucking spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're fucking spiritual, because you are God made
Right.
in the human form. And like, there's no right way to be or to manifest.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And I think it's just like releasing the expectation that you have to be perfect in order to be worthy of what you want or in order to create what you want. Like, I want to be the example that like, I'm a fucking hot mess and I did it. So can you. Right. Like, we always like put people on a pedestal and think that like, oh, well, it works for them because they have all of their practices in line and they just show up every day and it's not hard. And it's like, no, I literally recorded a podcast last week and was like, guys, I just had a mental breakdown and now I'm like getting on, my podcast. And that's the point. It's like, just continue on your journey, do the best you can with your humanness. And we're not trying to eradicate, like you being human. We're not trying to make your emotions go away. You're not trying to be happy all the fucking time. You're trying to learn how to deal with your humanness and move through it in a more graceful way and in a way that allows you to just become more of who you're meant to be.
So good. So good. Just let that sink in, you guys. Let that sink in. And like, it's also great because I feel like in the coaching industry in particular, in the speaking industry, I think people are put on pedestals.
Yeah.
And like everyone that you guys listen to, us included, Tony Robbins included, like anyone that you listen to is a fucking human.
Yeah.
Just like you. Just like you. So it's just like, being allowing yourself to be human, to become more of who you are. Like you just said.
Exactly. And let it go. Like, let it go. Like, the shit you did in your past doesn't matter. Where you came from doesn't matter. Like, where are you right now? Be where your feet are. Great. Awesome. Now let's start here. Right. And that's the message. It's like, we're so hard on ourselves as humans. And I was so hard on myself for so long, and it drove me to do so many things that were even more destructive. And so I realized the first step was me having to unidentify with who I thought I was.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I
thought I was the girl that was on tables taking tequila shots. I was the one that was the wild party girl because it was easier to pretend that I was just wild and fun than deal with what was really going on in my heart. Right.
Yeah.
But I identified with that. And so when I got online, I was like, no one's going to take me seriously. Everyone thinks I'm the party girl. What? I'm talking about self-development. It's like, no, you decide your new identity. You show up in your new identity, and then everyone else will follow suit.
I think that belief could be for so many people of like, no matter what you do, like, I know a lot of people, like for me, I worked at a corporation, then I worked in real estate, and then I had a network marketing business, and then I did modeling. I did all these things. And I'm like, now I'm going to switch into being a coach. Nobody's going to take me seriously.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, oh, Ashley did all these things and now she's a coach. What? And it's just funny because when I made that transition, people were like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're the person that criticizes the most, that is fearful the most. Like, it took me 3 years to start my podcast. I've been wanting to start a podcast forever. Right. I mean, granted, it all happens in perfect timing.
Yes.
But it's just like, you decide who you are in the world. No one else gets to tell you. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday. It doesn't matter who you were yesterday. Like, that person is no longer. You are here now. And you get to decide, and then people will literally it will unfold, and people will respect who you are becoming, and or they will fall off. Like, that's, you owe it to yourself and the rest of the world to become who in your heart you're meant to be.
Yes. So beautifully said. So beautifully said. I'm curious for you, what is your like woo-wooiest manifestation prince? Like what's something like really weird that you do to manifest?
Oh my gosh. How long do we have? No. I like to think of myself as practical woo, but I've definitely gotten wooier over the years. I don't know how crazy woo. It depends on who's listening to this, right? But I put my crystals out in the moon. I do all of my full moon, new moon rituals. But something that I do religiously is I will put on headphones like hertz frequency, and I will literally go through and visualize every single thing that I'm calling in. So it depends on if I'm looking a year out, a month out, a week out. It doesn't really matter, right? But the thing, and I recorded a podcast on this actually yesterday, is the number one thing I've realized with manifestation is that, our brains, if you study the brain, and I know that Ash, both you and I have studied the subconscious, like very in depth. Yes. It's like your brain is always going to look to the past to try to predict the future. Right. So you have to deliberately decide to practice what you want in the future in your mind first before it is manifested. Right. You have to know what to do. You need a roadmap. Your brain needs to know where to go, and it's going to go to default, especially when you're in the triggered moments, especially when you're in the moments where it's scary to show up, where you don't want to do the thing, where it's hard, where it's stretchy. You're going to naturally go back. And so you've got to practice in your mind, right? In your mind's eye. We hear that. Where you want to go in the future. And even it could be like a reaction to something, even, like today when I was coaching someone about family drama through the holidays, right? And I was like, if you're always reacting and triggered and go to this place, let's break it down. Now let's go to the place in the future where, how could you respond to this? Practice that in your mind, right? That's something really small. But again, everything happens in the small incremental decisions, right? And your triggers and your reactions softening just a little bit, just 1% more. But you've got to know what you're going to do in your brain before you get there, because when you get into the moment where it's go time, where you're meant, where you have the opportunity to grow and to change, if you are in a heightened state, your brain is naturally going to go back and revert back to how you've always handled it in the past. So I don't know how woo-woo it is, but I sit with my crystals, I sit with my hertz frequency, and I literally will just visualize me showing up, me on stage, me having 100,000 podcast downloads, or whatever that is, right? And how it'll feel when I get there.
Something else I notice about you and the way you show up is you celebrate everything.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
And I see that, and I do that too. Like the smallest things, like when I hit 500 podcast downloads, I was acting like it was 100,000 because it was a big deal to me.
Yeah.
And I know that you celebrate every single listener and every single thing that happens. And I really admire that about you too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I think really to put it in perspective for those of you, especially those of you that have an online business or anybody that has an online influence, even if you only have 100 followers, it's 100 people that are listening to you, right? And so I always think about when I'm creating my podcasts, right? I have 50,000 downloads right now, a little over. But I imagine a room, right? Or 7,000
50,000 people.
50,
I think
people.
About that too.
All the time. I'm if I'm on a stage, when you are online and you're building an online business, that is your stage. That is your platform. You might not realize it because you're sitting alone at your desk, but you are on a stage and you are speaking on a stage, and you have a responsibility on how you show up for those people in that room. And I always think of everyone as an individual person, an individual seat. And people are coming through those doors and adding seats every single day to listen to what I have to say, to listen to what you have to say, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so don't discount that. Don't discredit that. 500 people on a podcast download, like 500 people showed up to your room.
Yep.
That's huge.
Huge.
And so we tend to discount so many things, and it's like, you can't do that, right? You have to look at and celebrate every
single thing. And
every
that's
single
like one of the most basic principles is like celebrate what is happening versus what's not happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about your focus.
Yeah.
Like, I hate the saying, like, where your focus goes, energy flows, or whatever.
But it's
like,
fucking true.
But it's true. Like, it's literally true. You want to focus on the lack of and how everybody else seems to be doing better than you, even though they started 10 years ago, and you're comparing yourself to a highlight reel that you see on the internet. Like, okay, fine. We all have a tendency to do that, but check yourself.
Yeah.
And look at like what you really have. And to do that, like, I'll be honest, I'm so real about the shit I go through. Like, I just moved 3-story townhome, my dream townhome, been on my vision board for 3 years. I have the business, the podcast, everything that I wanted.
The boo.
2 years ago. Yeah, the boo, like everything. And I was like crying when we moved in here because I was so overwhelmed and there was so much to do. And then I was like, Rachel, you need to get your head out of your fucking ass because look.
Because all of your dreams are coming true.
Right. Like, we always want to be to the next and the next and the next. And I caught myself that. And I was like, now I want to be at months. Now I want to be, 100,000 downloads, 50, kind of thing. And it's like, wait, hold on. Like, I didn't even know I'd be at 50,000 in 5 months, 5 months ago. I didn't know you have to deliberately do it. Like, our brains aren't wired to deliberately look at all the things that we have. You have to like make yourself, you have to check yourself.
You really
right?
do.
Mm-hmm.
You really, really do. And just to go back for a second about what you just said about like, your business is flowing, you just moved into your dream place, like everything is happening. And that's another thing that happens in small moments is like our dreams come true in small moments that then lead to like this big moment, right? It's not like, it's very rare that it just like happens overnight and you're like, how did that happen? It's like incremental.
Yes. That's something that I realized about manifestation that I think a lot of people, when you get on this journey, like, you think that like, oh, I'm going to like put out my manifestations and I like write them down in the present tense. I'm going to do the practices. Great, whatever. Right. And you think like it's going to poof, it's just going to come and you're going to notice. What I've realized about manifesting is it almost happens so slowly that all of a sudden you're in it and you don't even realize it. And then you like have a moment where you're looking around and you're like, wait, this was on my vision board. Hold on.
Yes.
Like, you don't even like realize that it happens.
It's sneaky.
It's so sneaky. It's crazy. So crazy. I was manifesting speaking on a stage. And when you and I were speakers, like that was a big moment when I was up there and I was like, whoa, right? So you will have moments like that, but most of them are going to be small and sneaky, and you're not even going to realize that you manifested it. And then you're going to look back and go, oh, holy shit. Like I wrote about this last year, right?
Yeah. It's so powerful. Mm-hmm. So powerful. This is such a good conversation.
This is so much fun.
So I have to ask, what makes you a badass manifester?
Oh, girl, about the fact that I just don't give a fuck like about what people think anymore. I mean, obviously we do to a degree, everyone does, right? But like just the fact that I show up every day, right? And like it doesn't matter what happened yesterday. You don't have to get it perfect. You don't have to get it right. It doesn't matter what's happened before, right? Like every one of us is a badass manifester. You just get to tap into it more and more. And I think that, we've both really gotten to tap into that. And I'm so fortunate that we get to do this with the world so that they can tap into their badass manifester side too. Because we all are amazing and worthy and meant to do all the things that are on our heart, right? And you owe it to yourself and everyone else to do that. And I feel very proud that I have followed my gut. And it feels really, really good.
I'm proud of you too. And I'm grateful that you did because you're helping so many people. And that's literally what we're here for. That's it.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
this is what we came for.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful just be connected with you and to get to
Love you.
create together and collaborate in the world and share our audiences. Cause I know everyone listening to this is going to love both of our platforms, whether you're from my community or Ash's. So yeah, this has been so much fun. Such a good conversation today.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for showing up the way that you do. And I know that everyone's going to be running to your show right now and running to your Instagram, which is so good. So share how they can connect with you, where they can find you.
Yes. Okay. So you can find me at Rachel Gibler on Instagram. It's Gibler. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes too. On Instagram or TikTok, you can also search It's Fucking Spiritual in Apple, Spotify, all of the things, wherever you listen. I can be in your ear holes. So come hang out. And honestly, you guys DM me, message me. Like I always try to get back to everybody. And I'm really, really interactive with my community. So I love when you guys say hello. So definitely come over.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Such a good show. Thank you guys for listening. Please tag us and let us know what your favorite part was, what your biggest aha moment was. DM us. We want to hear from you. So definitely hit us up. And I can't wait to have you guys come over on Rachel's podcast and listen to our
I can't wait
little
to have
share.
You on. Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Thank you guys. Have an amazing day. Bye. Woo. We did some work today. Thank you so much for listening. You know I love my BAM fam. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who you know would love it too, because we live for the ripple effect over here. And how can you best support the show? Make sure you're subscribed, hit the 5 stars, and leave a review on iTunes, and let me know how the podcast has impacted you. I love being part of your real-time journey, so screenshot the episode and tag me and my guests on Instagram at ManifestWithAsh. Now say it with me. I am my own power source. I am the master of my own energy, and I deserve everything that I desire. We don't just talk about it over here, we be about it. Now go get 'em.